Last time I spent a few days camping along the Pacific coast in Los Padres. After we left there, we moved north into Jawbone, nice riding area, and then visited the Trona Pinnacles, and then up into Death Valley finally. And on the way, before we left the coast, we found this spectacle just below San Simeon, as I recall. This I think it was a state park. You couldn't go out onto the beach, but they built a nice platform walkway that you could get out and get pretty close to the animals without messing with them. I imagine that in the past people would probably terrify these animals by taking their dogs on the beach, and that's probably why they restrict your access to what looks to be a very protected area. You don't see a lot of these guys on the coast outside of Monterey, but there's a few of them scattered around. But this is the most that I've seen in one place. Probably the whole time I was there, this is more than I've seen the whole time I was in California. So it was pretty cool to check these guys out, see them frolic in the water and sunbathing. Pretty interesting hour I think I spent out here watching, taking pictures. Definitely worth a stop if you're in that area. After leaving the coast, we wound up in a place called Jawbone Valley and found an off-road park. We spent a couple of nights there riding around. Before we went riding, the dude and I went walking and exploring, and dude found some interesting artifacts laying in the brush, and we collected a few of these, what felt like steel, tinfoil, but looked a little bit more structurally interesting. But I'd seen some things like this before, but I never really figured out what they were. So just bagged them up and deposited them on the way out. That afternoon, the storm blew in. It was kind of shocking since it was so hot, and the wind was so brutal, and it went. The temperatures dropped so quickly. I was afraid to do much riding because I didn't know what the weather was going to do.
That looks like a desert storm coming over the pass there. And there's some cold wind coming with it. Just wonder if it's going to make it all the way down here to us. I come to the desert for sunshine, and all I get is rain. It causes me so much pain. This time yesterday, 2 o'clock, it was 85 degrees. Now it's 51 degrees, same time as yesterday.
We did get a little bit of rain down where I was camped, but not much to speak of. Most of it stayed up in the hills apparently, but the wind was all over the place. So consequently, the next morning it was dry enough and still kind of cold, but it was a great day to go riding. And this is a really interesting place. It looks like it's designed mostly for four-wheelers and side-by-sides and maybe some jeeping. But this is all operated by Bureau of Land Management, which is always my favorite places because they have so few rules. rules that make sense, not rules to limit access or anything like that. You know, rules to prevent you from doing damage or too much damage. I just love Bureau of Land Management, the BLM. They get a bad rap for some stuff, but most of the time it's very free and open, and you can ride and do just about anything you want to do. And this is one of the sandy roads. One of my first experiences with Joshua trees. You can see these tall yuccas. They look like trees, but they're really yucca. I'm passing some right here, and then we get into a deep patch right around this corner. But pretty spectacular. You don't see these very often. If you want to see Joshua trees, you need to go to the town of Joshua Tree and Joshua Tree National Park. There's some pretty tall ones here. Then we got some really tall ones in Joshua Tree. But this was my first taste of this environment, and this is a pretty well kept park. I would say this is, you know, akin to a state park in many states. It's beautiful, well kept, well groomed, decent facilities, and sand. You can see I'm struggling here with my little street tires. But there was a handful of motorcycles out there, and when I got back to camp, as the sun was going down, I see this guy up on the hill, up above my camp, on this big GS. And I don't know if you know motorcycles, but if you don't, this thing's a monster. It's, you know, it's a adventure motorcycle, so it was kind of built for stuff like this. But this hill is kind of the extreme. It's pretty steep, and it's nothing but sand, with some big rocks in the wrong places. And this guy was he was my hero for riding this bike. Just even going down this thing is pretty bad. And then I caught him going up it, or trying to go up it. He's basically on street tires like me, except his bike weighs a couple 100 pounds more than mine, and just the fact that he tried to go up it and was pretty extraordinary. I'm always interested in people taking the wrong bikes to the wrong place, and this was a pretty good example. You know, obviously he's got enough skill to not crash, and you see him struggling just to turn the thing around here, because it's you don't just, you know, whip it around like a dirt bike. You have to. It's a job, and not just that. If he'd have made a mistake here, he would have been underneath that 450-pound motorcycle upside down, which is almost impossible to get out from under, and then to actually pick the bike up. But anyway, after he got down the hill, I screamed and waved at him, and told him I got some pretty good shots of him making the attempt to climb and get back down, and I shared that with him a few days later after I uploaded it. He was pretty excited. So overall, Jawbone Valley turned out to be a fantastic stop for 2 days. Had lots of desert riding, and got to explore a few collapsed mine shafts that the BLM had roped off for the dummies like me to keep us from climbing down in them. But lots of introduction to sand riding and great days riding. And then we moved north into the Trona Pinnacles, just a few miles north, and pretty spectacular geologic formations. And they used this location as a backdrop for quite a few films, mostly science fiction. Anytime they needed an alien backdrop, they used Trona Pinnacles. Apparently, there's quite a few films that had been filmed here, and there's a list you can see scrolling below. A few miles down the road, we ran into this ghost town called Ballarat, and it was kind of a joke. The introduction on the way to the town, here's somebody rolled and abandoned their pickup truck. I'm guessing they were drinking, because I'm not sure how you would roll it. But turns out this was the only remaining structure from the ghost town. Everything else was kind of a rip-off. Anyway, so we kept heading towards Death Valley, and it turns out this is one of the steepest and hardest climbs, even outside the Rockies. This was kind of crazy, because the road just kind of went straight up the mountain, no switchbacks or nothing, just straight up the mountain. And I don't have a good shot of it, but I think I got down to like 8 miles an hour just crawling up that hill, and then down the other side into the valley, and a few pictures of the Devil's Golf Course, which was one of the amazing attractions out here. Couldn't see a lot because there was a dust storm blowing through the valley and it was choking, and this was probably the best time of day I'd spent out there at all. And the most you could see, if you look in the back, you can't even see the mountains in the distance. It's just covered up by dust. And this was even one of the lulls, so we got out and walked around and took a few pictures, but then we decided to keep moving and see what else we could see without the dust obscuring all of our visions. Devil's Golf Course is some kind of a mineral salt deposit that makes these formations that are about 2 feet deep. You can walk out there, but I wouldn't recommend it because of the sharp, spiny projections that come off of these. They look like rocks. They're about as hard as rocks, but I would say it's pretty dangerous. You get cut up if you're not
Outside
careful.
is the Devil's Golf Course. Inside is the insanity of this wind. And I'm hoping you can hear it because it's just crazy. Now, I got a few pictures of golf course, and now I'm going to go to the lowest point, and then I'm going to Vegas, baby, because I got to get out of this wind. And this freaking dust storm that's behind it is just bullshit. So I'm out of here. The wind is definitely blowing.
So we rolled on down to the end of the park at Furnace Creek, and the lowest point in North America. It's kind of striking until you get the scale of what's going on here. We're below sea level that far. After that, we left and went to Pahrump, Nevada to avoid the storm, and then we moved on to Las Vegas. Join us next time as we move back into California in the Mojave, exploring lava tubes from ancient volcanoes.